feature presentation.
Welcome to episode 134 of the Untitled Movie Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside. He's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Skinamarinky dinky doo, Matt.
Skimminarinky doo, I love you. What's up, homie? It's been a while. I'm back from vacation. You're back from COVID part 2.
Or maybe, I don't know. I have no idea
Yeah.
anymore.
Who knows with anything anymore, man? I was just in Florida for 2 weeks, so I could be, fucking just swimming in it right now. Who knows? But yeah, I'm back from vacation. I just was in Orlando for 10 days with my mother, my mama, my papa, my sister, and my wife. Went to Disney World in Orlando, but I'm not going to talk about that today. That's going to be its own episode next week. I'm going to talk about the best rides at Disney World. I'm going to talk about the best rides at Universal Orlando. I'm going to talk about all the shenanigans I got into with my family. I built a lightsaber. It's right over here. I'll show that on the next episode.
What a tease. It's like a
for
Marvel movie.
for that's the post-credit scene will just be me turning on my lightsaber and you'll see what color I chose. I'll talk about all that next week, but this week Eric and I just kind of we haven't chatted on this show in a while. We're just going to shoot the shit. We're going to talk about what we've been watching. We're going to talk about some Super Bowl trailers. We're going to talk about the Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania press conference that Eric listened to while I was gone. A bunch of stuff. But Eric, how are you doing?
Well, Matt, I'm okay. I mean, I'm a lot better than I was before you left. Um, but I still have a little bit of the rasp in the voice and kind of feeling not exhausted, but just kind of a little bit more drained of energy. It
Yeah.
was interesting because, again, I didn't feel sick the way I did when I had COVID back in April of last year, because it was much more manageable. Like, this just kind of felt like a head cold for the most part. Really focusing on the throat. So I've been basically inside for the majority of 2 weeks, with just the one exception of seeing Ant-Man, but I was testing negative at that point, so that's why I went to go and see that. So I haven't been out anywhere else since then, or even before. So I haven't watched 80 for Brady or Knock at the Cabin or Magic
Which
Mike's
I will
Last
talk about.
Dance
Yeah.
as of yet, but I will catch up with those movies in the near future. But obviously you're going to be talking about your trip next week. But how are you feeling? Just coming back now and kind of getting back into Canadian winter, and also just
Yeah.
a
I mean,
routine.
the weather's been pretty good the last 2 days, to be honest. Like, since I got home, it's been in the plus like 5 or plus 8, which for here in February is quite nice. But yeah, I mean, just it was wonderful to get away for a good chunk of time in the winter to somewhere where it's warm, because like I hadn't done that in a while. And it just kind of breaks up the winter, which is nice, right? Like that seasonal depression, the kind of like we left at like the most frigid time, when I think it was like minus 30 Celsius when we left, or something, like the day we left. So to go into, Floridian weather, which was all plus 25, plus 22, plus 27, plus 30 one day, like in Florida, was like really kind of nice, like sunshine, got to wear shorts every day, like wasn't too hot. There was only like one day when it got up to like plus 30 where I'm like, the sun's beating on you and you're like, this is almost too much, but I should not complain because it's very cold back home. So like, without getting into the specifics of like the rides and the movie tie-ins, which is what I'll get into next week, like the trip overall was probably one of the best trips I've ever taken. Like, it was just so nice to spend time with my family, go to some nice weather, be in that kind of bubble for a week, like that Disney bubble, especially because we stayed on resort, that like you don't feel like you're in reality, if that makes sense. Like you're like you're going into the quantum realm for 10 days, because like I barely looked at my phone, I barely went on Twitter, I barely followed the alien invasion that was happening.
Shoot
I
it down.
barely I barely followed anything that was going on in the real world because our days, we jam packed them so much because we all really wanted to do the theme parks and stuff like that, that they were like 12+ hour days, like 25,000 to 30,000 steps every day, like walking these theme parks, going on rides, being at the resort, um, barely on your phone other than looking for like fast passes or ride times on the Disney World app or something like that. So like it was just nice to escape for 10 days. And like I love theme parks. I It's the one thing where like I'm not an emotionless guy, but like I don't show emotion a lot. Like if I really love something in a movie or sports or something like that, like my wife love things like that. Like I do show emotion, but like I I very rarely there's one place like theme parks. It seems like something I would hate on paper, right? Lots of people to wait in lines. Everything's expensive. Um, there's a lot going for it where you're like, why would I understand why people wouldn't like them, right? They're for children. There's tons of children there, all of these things. Um, but for some reason, it's theme parks, specifically the very elaborate theme parks that have a lot of movie tie-ins, right? Being movie guys. I've always loved like Canada's Wonderland here in Toronto when it was Paramount Canada's Wonderland. And every ride was Paramount movie themed. I loved that place. And then when they removed all that branding, I cared less. But when you go to Disney and you go to Universal and everything's about, something you've enjoyed as a child or something you enjoy now, whether it's Star Wars or Marvel, but also enjoyed as a child. Um, and Universal, same thing with Jurassic Park themed stuff and Back to the Future, the ET ride, all that kind of stuff. You're just escaped to this one place where I just feel, motivated and happy, and you want to get up every morning at 7 a.m. and you want to go on every ride, and you're not in the real world. It's like watching a movie. That's why I love movies, right? Because it's escapism for me. Some people find it as art, and there are times I view film as art, and a lot of the times film is art, but a lot of the times it's escapism for me. It's going to another world. It's getting away from my own life. It's walking in someone else's shoes, and that tactile nature of being in a theme park where you're engrossed in these worlds, and I just really love it. So it was fun to kind of just get away for 10 days, and then being with my family. Like, I spend time with my family, like, but being 10 days together of my mom, my sister, my dad, um, my mom almost wasn't able to go on the trip. And it was really kind of emotional that last week leading up to it, where it was touch and go when it comes to if my mom was able to travel, because she, uh, not to get too personal, but she had some health issues and stuff like that, where it wasn't looking like she could go on the trip. And our family was devastated, but she was able to go. And just my mom and my dad being in their mid 60s, and they walked 20 some thousand steps every day with us. They got up in the morning. My dad was so happy to ride 37 rides at Disney World. He wanted we wrote them all down and ranked them. I'll share that ranking next week, and I did that with my whole family. And my dad was really proud that he went on 37 rides, and there was nothing he skipped out on, nothing he was like, I'm not going to do that. That's too much for me. I'm 65 or whatever. And my mom, the same thing, where there was more where she had to maybe tap out and not go on because of different issues and stuff like that. But she went on a lot too. And it's something I'll cherish for a long time. And people make jokes about Disney adulting and stuff like that. We were Disney adults for a week, and it was a blast. So it was really fun. And it was just nice to have everyone, together, and doing all that stuff. And it was a near perfect trip. So that's the little short teaser. The weather was amazing. You come back, and I wore shorts to get a coffee today, and someone went, shorts in February, and I was like, yeah, I'm just getting a coffee. And she's like, no, this is wonderful. So I came back to
You sound like
good
David
weather
Lynch.
too. Yeah, David Lynch saw me. He's like, you're wearing shorts in February.
That's
um
wonderful.
yeah, that's great. Well, look at this. Get me a Timbit. I got an ice cap this morning for some reason. I don't know why I got an ice cap. I think there was a deal. Anyways, trip was wonderful. So now I'm back home. First thing Nevis and I did was went to go see a couple movies. So I caught up on 80 for Brady and Knock at the Cabin. I can talk a little bit about those. 80 for Brady makes sense with the Super Bowl stuff we're going to be talking about. Uh, Knock at the Cabin, uh, not Super Bowl or football related, but M. Night Shyamalan. A little subdued Shyamalan. I like it. We'll talk about that later too. I can't wait for you to see them, or else maybe we would do individual reviews, or maybe we'll just kind of talk about them when I see them, and then when you ultimately go see them. But then I went out for a Valentine's Day dinner with Nevis yesterday night. So been very busy, Eric. That's the thing. Like, not like today was my first day of being like, I'm gonna relax this morning. And I just say that I just got back from a vacation, but it was one of those vacations where it was like get up at 7 a.m. and you're getting back at 11 p.m. every night or something like that. So it was not one of those lounge by the pool and do nothing vacations. It was like a go, 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 go vacation. So, and then immediately went and saw movies, had a great dinner with Nevis last night. So yeah, been busy, but it was great. So what about you with your pseudo COVID? You watched Skinamarink, right? Like
Yes,
what
I've
else
been
did you
in
get
and out
up
of
to?
consciousness for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah.
Um, which is true. Yeah, so I watched Skinamarink, which you had watched. You saw theatrically at the review. It's now available on Shutter in Canada and I believe in the U.S. as well to stream. And it's one of those movies where I kind of love it and I'm also frustrated by it at the same time. And there's
Okay.
this weird moral stance that I've kind of taken with it. And I don't mean to necessarily sound prudish, but there is something about putting young kids in danger that kind of does feel like a cheap tactic a little bit that kind of bothers me. But um I think visually speaking, it's a very well constructed piece of not genre filmmaking, but almost like art house installation kind of experimental filmmaking where part of it is kind of like that, talking about David Lynch, the midnight madness kind of midnight movie kind of thing. And then a part of it as well is also just like this avant-garde experimental sort of infrastructure that it's using and sort of looking at the artifice of technology and tactile objects from the 90s and kind of finding a um, warping nostalgia or subverting nostalgia in a way that's kind of horrifying in that you have these two kids that you barely see. It's from their point of view and they're very young and it's almost like a dream where they're waking up one night and kind of left to their own devices and having to kind of fend for themselves and realizing maybe they're not alone because the windows and doors have disappeared and they keep hearing this weird distorted voice. But it works. It's a very creepy movie and I think like when you do get those moments of horror because it's like the definition of the loosest narrative. There's not a lot of plot there, which I think is almost more frightening than anything else, that you're so kind of in this almost like VR interactive state with this this set that you're on. It's the director's actual home, childhood home. um that it makes it creepy because you're just so uncomfortable with it, and you don't know how to process it. And I think like those movies that are challenging like that are the best ones, and the films that it's like maybe you don't necessarily love to begin with, but you do think about. And there are certain scenes in the film, especially the ending and the final shot, that are very haunting and just they stay with you in a way that I think most horror movies aren't as daring as this, or even just art house films in general. Like it's just also fascinating to think that this movie played a week in limited release, but in Canada it also did play Scotiabank Theater for a week. And it's like
After its review, right?
yeah,
Run or
after the
whatever.
review.
Yeah.
And
Because
and
it
I
got so much viral kind of hype, and it also played in Montreal, right? At
yeah,
Fantasia, like last year. Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. The kid thing doesn't bother me as much. I guess it's an easy way to make it scarier or something like that. But um I just think I think I said it when I saw it the first time. Like if you are doing a low budget, horror movie, I think that, and a very micro budget movie, like I think that this is an incredibly clever way to use what you have to make something interesting. And I think I talked about it of like, how big, we talked about Ant-Man and the Wasp, which we can talk about now. The embargo's up. You guys can check out our spoiler free review right now. Um, when you're given so much money to do whatever you want, I think sometimes you take the easy way out, right? You just go, we'll shoot everything on green screen. We'll figure out how it looks. Um, there's no real creativity there, even though you're posing as it's creative, but you have all the means to do whatever you want, that you don't have to kind of get creative to try to figure out the problems you would have if you didn't have the money to do something. That's where practical effects, camera movement, camera placement, lighting, all this kind of stuff comes into play in these very small budget movies, especially when you're trying to scare people or make them unsettled, or create something abstract or unique. I feel like when you have no money to just do whatever you want, you have to go, okay, what is a cool way to do this for the money we have, or the little to no money we have? And I feel like that's when you get some really creative things in the use of, yeah, like you said, playing with nostalgia and the television program and lighting, like I mentioned, and point of view, perspective, all that kind of stuff. I think they do. The filmmaker, what's his name again? Do you have it
Kyle
offhand?
Edward Ball,
Kyle.
and
Yeah,
and the budget was reportedly $15,000.
which is nothing. It's really nothing, right? I can max out my credit card with $15,000 if I wanted to.
You could make your own
Um,
Skinamarink.
and that's what I mean. But like, I can't, right? Like that
No.
comes from the creativeness of it, of just like, that's what I found really enticing throughout it. Like, it is a tedious movie. And I don't mean that as an insult, because like, it is such a slow burn that I understand why it would be tedious to a lot of people. I don't personally, I didn't find it tedious. It is a challenging movie, to your point, Eric, where it is so slow and methodical and plotless, that like, the very thin plot is like a demon is in this house, and it's not necessarily even taunting these children, but like, luring them to do things, or learning from a children's television program. And then, that's how what I took from it, is like this demonic house that's, with the things that are available to it, it's almost like learning like it is a child as well. Like, that's what I took from, like, you see a disappearing act on the television in a cartoon that they're doing. So the demon in the house does these things. They're very simple camera tricks
So the
and things
demon's
like
also
that. But
cheap then, right? Because it's in the
yeah,
cartoons are in the public domain.
yeah, exactly. So, and that's, but even stuff like that is like finding this one clip from a cartoon in a public domain that you can kind of utilize in your loose narrative of what this demon is doing to these children, that I found very unsettling. And it's a movie that I could have gone either way on, because I do often go either way on movies like this, where I go, this is unwatchable and I don't want, like, why would anyone want this? Or I go, I can appreciate it because of the filmmaking and the creativeness and things like that. And um I think people, the viral nature of it, where it was going viral on TikTok and other places, like, I think will ruin probably the quote unquote best moments of the movie. And then you'll just go in expecting those things and think it's that for its short runtime, where it takes a long time to get to those moments. And I think that viral hype will ultimately hurt the movie for a general audience that goes, ooh, I've heard this movie's terrifying, I'm gonna go see it. And then they're gonna be bored to tears. And there are a couple great jump scares, and some unsettling imagery throughout the movie, some of it even darkly comedic. um at least for people who know these toys that they're playing with, or maybe you're a fan of Toy Story or something like that too. But I don't know. I really liked it. Like, I think it's playing off, Paranormal Activity a bit, even though it's not found footage. Like, I feel like,
Blair Witch.
um, Blair Witch, that kind of, those movies that are iconic in the last 20, 30 years in the horror genre, that I think that's familiar to people, so they will, and scary to people, so they will kind of buy into that. And then that kind of abstract thing we already mentioned, David Lynch. I said, we mentioned Sharon Lois and Bram being the Skinamarink Dinky Dink song. So I, even in my original tweets, it's Sharon Lois and Lynch, because like it did have that kind of, we use that term too much, the Lynchian kind of term, but like I really did kind of get that vibe of that like hyper low budget, like David Lynch takes his fucking VHS cam and makes some
Well,
weird short
Eraserhead,
film or
right? Like
something.
that
Yeah, even
Eraserhead
Eraserhead.
was a
Yeah,
movie that came out in the late 70s and was kind of put together with the scraps of, AFI kind of helping him out and things like that. And when you see that movie, it's otherworldly, but it exists in a place that is coming directly from him, right? And like watching the movie, like there are other filmmakers that you think about as well. It's almost like, okay, imagine if, someone like Guy Madden or a Pitchapong Weerasethacool or even Matthew Rankin directed a Home Alone movie. This would be the
Matthew
version.
Rankin is who I thought of, man.
Yeah, well,
Kyle
especially with
Edward
the
Ball
sound
and Matthew
effects
Rankin
too.
is giving me hope for weird Canadian cinema, right?
Yeah. And this is also a
Like
Canadian film because the
yeah,
filmmakers from Edmonton, and so like even though it's not inherently a Canadian movie, like there's not a lot of like there's no Canadian flags or people talking, but
Pokeroo doesn't pop up and stab you or
no,
something.
no, but it
But
does have that kind of small budget, like late 70s, early 80s tax shelter kind of vibe where like it's something that you would watch on City TV or CBC at like midnight or 2 a.m. in the morning if you have insomnia and you would just kind of stumble upon it. But yeah, again, like I think an important point that you just made is that if you're going into this film based on the viral marketing or just kind of the grassroots of it all, I think some people will dig it if they're art house moviegoers. But if you go if you went to go and see this at Scotiabank Theater thinking you were going to get a found footage horror
like
movie
with
or
a
just
group of teenagers or something like that, they'd fucking
especially if you
hate it.
have a limit like a limited attention span, right? Like I feel like this is a movie that yeah, it's weird that it's doing well being advertised on TikTok of all things because TikTok is about having something that's like what like
I don't
20
even think it was
seconds,
from them. I think it was just people who, because it leaked online after it
right?
premiered, I think, at thing. So I think people were taking moments from it and just putting them on TikTok. I don't
Yeah,
even
but
think it
but
was the
again,
filmmaker. I
when you're
don't know. I
watching,
don't even
no,
think it
no,
was
no,
like
I'm
official
not even
marketing,
saying,
but
no, I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying like if you're watching, a short
oh
clip
right.
of it on TikTok or any social media whatsoever, there's a part of you. It's like okay, well, it's like oh, I'm gonna get this for the entire running time, and I need to get this in order to stimulate my mind because if I don't have this for the hour and what like 20 or hour 30 it is, I'm going to be bored. And that's the world we live in now where attention spans are
Oh
so
yeah.
finite or limited that it's just like like you can see someone being creeped out by something that's 20 seconds on TikTok, but then going to the theater and watching the full movie and being like what the hell is this?
Yeah, and you can see right now, like it has a 44% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 5.1 out of 10 on IMDb. So what it's basically what I'm saying is like people, this viral hype of being like Skinamarink is fucking terrifying. It's the scariest, blah 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 blah. You see the clip of like a creepy thing 20 seconds on TikTok, and that's only like one of three moments in the movie, and it takes an hour and 40 minutes to kind of build that tension. I think it does a good job building tension. I find movies that build tension and nothing happens to be scarier than movies that just throw jump scares at you. So for me, even if it's very slow pace, I was still like intrigued by the entire thing. But I could understand someone going to Scotiabank being like, I heard the Skinamarink movie's terrifying, and they go see it and they're just like, is something gonna happen? Like, and like, it takes an hour before anything really happens in the movie, and it's just so, you know, yeah, it just sits on shots for so long. And you brought up a Pitchapong, Versecathu, and I remember even, that screening of Memoria that we saw at TIFF. It's very much, yeah, that style of just sitting on something and waiting and waiting and waiting, and nothing might happen, and then you might move to the next thing, and then you waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then nothing might happen, and then you move to the and then something very disturbing happens, but it takes a long time to get there. Or I really dug it. It sat with me, and I have I don't know how it would play at home. You did watch it at home, but like
I think it's
I don't
creepy
know
at
if I
home. I think watching it at
yeah.
home makes it kind of creepier because you're in a place that's supposed to be, safe and comfortable. And it, like you're watching this thing that's reminding you of, you know, I think the biggest fear is as a child, and I think it really does tap into this, is that, if your parents are gone and you're alone, and if you have a sibling or somebody looking after
Yes.
you, that idea of kind of not being sure what to do and not being sure like how to like do you how do you fend for yourself, because these are little kids, like these are kids that are what, like probably like 4 and 6 or something like that,
Yeah.
and so
Under
like
10 for sure, but
the
like yeah,
world's
it's the
scarier and bigger because of that, and I think
especially
that
in the middle
also
of the night too,
works.
right? We
Yeah.
all remember those moments as a kid waking up in the middle of the night and what scared you, right? Like so I think it plays on that nostalgia and that those memories um really really well. But yeah, go check it out. It's on Shutter. If you get on its wavelength, uh I feel like you'll know very quickly if you vibe with it or not. Give it 10-15 minutes, and if you're like, I'm intrigued by this, stick it with the 140. But like it's definitely not going to be for everyone, and I understand. So um I did really vibe with it. Okay. I can talk a little bit about yeah, the little movie experience I had with my wife on Monday, the day we got back from our trip. I saw 80 for Brady and Knock at the Cabin, the perfect double bill the morning after the Super Bowl. Um God, where do I start? 80 for Brady. I don't need to go into a lot of detail about 80 for Brady. I don't think we need to do a review for 80 for Brady. I'm just glad they make movies for different age groups, you know? That's all I'm happy about. Like my mom and her friends gonna love this movie. This is a movie that's like definitely not for me even as a sports fan. I don't really care about Tom Brady or football all that much. Um but it's a movie you watch and it's not very good. But I was intrigued one because the director is one of the co-directors of
The Climb.
The Climb, which we saw at TIFF, which I think I was sort of mixed on. I forget, but I did like elements of that movie. Um, even if I ultimately at the end of it I was mixed on it. But it was weird to me that he was directing this. Um, and then Guy Fieri is in it. I'm like, I'm in. And you have a bunch of former Academy Award winners and nominees in the film. Um, it's very much a movie for that age group, for for this 60 plus crowd, and that's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to be ageist or anything like that. It's just watching the movie, the humor, the the filmmaking it's just it's not for a 34-year-old couple. It can be, I guess, but like I just didn't find a ton of enjoyment out of it. The jokes are very corny. The filmmaking is very simple. It's got that classic kind of sports movie, road trip movie kind of true story, but elevated to the point where not elevated, but to the point where it's like it's not really the true story. You throw so much in there that's ridiculous and over the top that this clearly didn't happen. Um, but it's cute, I guess. Like I gave the movie a 2 out of 5, just very much not for me. But like I didn't sit there going, "Oh my god, when is this going to end?" And I willingly went with my wife to go see it. So like, and I didn't hate my time with it. It was just at the end of it, I'm like, "This isn't for me." But then I immediately messaged my mom when she saw my Instagram story, and she's like, "I want to see that." And I went, "You're gonna love it." And then that was my review of 80 for Brady. So. I don't know if you have any questions about 80 for Brady, Eric, but I don't really have much to say about it.
I mean, I'm curious to see it because of Kyle Marvin directing it, who is the co-star of The Climb. Um, And there's a really good article about that on IndieWire where he talks about kind of, making a film that is more mainstream and something that is, like just kind of making pure entertainment and not necessarily
Yeah.
trying to even subvert those expectations. And I think like that's kind of an interesting perspective, because when you hear about weird combinations of like a filmmaker who's, done something that's kind of a little bit more off the beaten trail, and then I mean, we talk about this all the time with Sundance directors going into big studio movies, whether they be Marvel films or other franchises, and you think like, oh, are they going to bring anything that they have that we saw in those movies into the studio system? And um Kyle Marvin was talking a little bit about how that was the opposite of what he wanted to do,
He
and
wanted to do. He just
do
wanted to make a
something.
studio movie. Yeah.
Yeah, he still was saying like, "Oh, this will benefit me to go and make another small movie because I'll get the money to do it, but also I want to make this kind of movie because it's a challenge to make, a film that is more straightforward." So I kind of appreciated that, and just in
And I
terms of
think the
like,
movie accomplishes exactly what it sets out to do, right? Like I
yeah,
can't fault the movie at all. It just wasn't for me, you know? Like I do think for its targeted audience, they will enjoy it. And you know, objectively while watching it, I'm just like, I don't think this is good, but there are a lot of movies that I don't necessarily think are trying to be more than what they are, and they kind of accomplish it. And it's not like it's filmmaking at its finest, but it's totally passable, passive entertainment for a couple hours for a specific group. And I think for our parents' ages and that crowd that this movie is clearly marketed towards. And I think some sports fans, Tom Brady fans, things like that, but mostly I think the 60,
Triple D
65
fans.
retiree crowd is what they're going for. And I think you can tell in the humor. And it seems like all the ladies are having fun making it, and that's important too, right? Like they're at a point in their careers where they can do whatever they want, and like they're just kind of. I love Sally Field. I love everyone. Rita Moreno's great, and it's just I don't know the humor. While I kind of like snickered at a lot of it, the Guy Fieri stuff. I did genuinely like because I just think he's a funny character, and I think some of the best moments were in the trailers and things like that, but not a horrible time at the movies. Just after I watched it, I went, okay, I didn't need to see that. I didn't need
You
to go
kind of
see
know what
that.
you're getting, even with
Yeah,
Kyle Marvin didn't direct The Climb, but he's the co-star of it, and Michael Angelo
right.
Covino,
Okay, thank
um,
you for correcting me on that.
who is the director
Directed
of
it,
The
correct?
Climb, didn't direct 80 for Brady, but he's an executive producer on this and also did some
No,
script rewrites. And in that same IndieWire interview, he also talks about how like both of them wanted to, like, they were originally both going to direct the film together, but then something happened where like Cavino just didn't, whether it be scheduling or personal issues, like he just couldn't do it. But he was like, there were even photos of him, like production stills of him on set going through the script with some of the actors and stuff like that. um so it is just interesting from that perspective, if you are like an indie movie person and you were kind of like, oh, I'd like to see what those guys are up to now. And then you go in and watch this. It's like the reverse version of Skinamarink in a weird way, where it's
yeah,
like, you get this advertisement for 80 for Brady, and then you see that it's, oh, Kyle Marvin who directed this, and then Michael Angelo Covino is an executive producer as well. So it's like, oh, the guys who did The Climb. um and then you're kind of going and think like, oh, this is gonna, like, secretly be like a Trojan horse kind of thing where like it's weirder than it actually is, but then ultimately it turns out to be more kind of a commercial film. But that, I think, is also kind of an interesting challenge for filmmakers, where it's like they adapt to the style of filmmaking that they're presented. And that was the conversation that they had in that IndieWire article. It's a really good piece, and it really kind of like,
and I applaud him for it.
yeah.
Sometimes you just want to do something different, and you're working with legends in this movie, which is pretty wild for him as well. And it seems like everyone had a good time making it, even if it wasn't for me. So that's my review of 80 for Brady. And then after 80 for Brady, my wife and I decided to do a VIP showing of Knock at the Cabin. Because it was, around dinner time. We were like, you know what? Let's just get some food in the VIP theater and watch a Shalamalan joint. So, um, I love talking about M. Night movies because we've talked about it on our show what seems like forever, that we always cheer for the guy. Every movie that comes out, it's going to be a crapshoot of if it's going to be, entertaining, good, laughable, just straight up bad. It could be any of these things. It could be a best picture nominee. Who the hell knows? It's been a while since that, but it,
Well,
it could be,
1999.
yeah. Um, it could be anything. So each M. Night movie, though, I'm excited to see what we're gonna get. Whether it's old, whether it's split, whether it's a weird Unbreakable sequel we didn't know we were gonna get. Just whatever comes our way, it could go a plethora of different ways. So Knock at the Cabin, uh, a movie that I even forgot was coming so quickly, and then it just kind of appeared out of nowhere. But I was
What are the
intrigued by it. I
twists?
love I love Dave Bautista. Seemed like a simple concept. Um, Always intrigued by an M Night movie, and I gotta say, kind of enjoyed the shit out of this movie. Like again, not perfect, not amazing, um, but for M Night doing something that's a little bit kind of more straightforward. Um, I kind of like single location, very performance driven and location driven, just like no fancy bells or whistles. There's some, we saw in the trailer some newscasts with some end of the world kind of stuff, but um, I just liked the simplicity of this and a really great performance from Dave Bautista. Like that guy, I just love that guy, man. Like if a guy who's taking on interesting roles, challenging roles for him, playing against type a lot of times, not just taking, and he's talked about this in interviews as well to keep that thread going too, of how he doesn't want to necessarily be The Rock or John Cena. He doesn't want to be a movie star. He wants to be an actor, and that's no insult to those guys. It's just like those are the types of roles he wants to take, is something that's a bit challenging to him, something that gives a little bit more meat on the bones. And I feel like in Knock at the Cabin, he has to carry this movie, and I think he's quite excellent. And the movie plays out almost in a predictable kind of, like, you see it coming from a mile away every step thing, but I kind of vibed with it for that reason, because of M. Night always trying to kind of throw a curveball at you or do something. Like there's still very much the like a bit of a twist, but it's still like pretty straightforward, where you're like, okay, yeah, I understood that that's what this movie was. Um, but I don't know. There was something about like, oh, okay, that was just people in a cabin talking. Some disturbing things happen, and it's not much more than that. And yeah, straightforward Shyamalan. I kind of vibed with. I really dug it.
Yeah, I'm
I know
looking forward to
you're gonna
catching
go
up.
see it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will. I mean, like he's one of those guys that I always kind of, you know, I'm always excited about what's next for him. I mean, he already has his next project set up for next year. And then it was just announced the other day that his daughter is making her directorial debut
Oh
over at
wow,
New Line with a horror film called The Watchers. So the Nepo baby
great.
conversation
You know,
continues.
power to him. I'm for someone who's job searching right now. I've got to be like, anyone got anything, Uncle Mark? You anything my way? So I understand that, but yeah, it was such a simple concept of like, can you make the obvious choice? That is the hardest choice, right? Like the thing, could you save the world if you had to kill someone you loved, right? And like that's the simplest log line of the movie, and that's what the movie is. But that it's such a tricky question in context when you have your husband or your wife and or your partner and your child, and even though you might be able to save the world. And I liked that kind of playing with what's going on in society today with conspiracy theories and echo chambers, and it's all very on the nose, and they discuss all this stuff in the movie. But like, I like that idea of how much would it take for you to believe these people across from you, right? That they are telling the truth. And that's like was an interesting, it kept me consistently engaged because you put yourself in the shoes of the characters of this outlandish fucking statement from these people that are all seemingly regular people, or what they're telling you are regular people, and they have to do this because whoever told them to, they're seeing visions. um it's such a ridiculous fucking thing, and they know that, but the more you see, the more you believe. And is it fake? Is it real? Like, are they telling the truth? Are they just psychopaths? Is this just a home invasion movie where they're fucking with them? It plays with your expectations and makes you believe them in one moment and not believe them in the next. And that comes from Dave Bautista and the supporting cast and stuff like that. So only criticisms I have is like, the young girl in the movie's not great. Child actors could go either way, right? Like, she's very clearly delivering a script, but I can't fault her on that. She's, probably one of her first movies. Um, I just, I don't know. And then also I didn't love, is it Ben Aldridge? Um,
Yeah.
who's Jonathan Groff's husband in the movie. Um, a little, and I said this about Jonathan Groff when he was in Manhunter. Was it Manhunter? No, what's it called? Not Manhunter. Um, Manhunter's the
Manhunter.
Michael Mann
Yeah.
movie. What am I thinking of? The David Fincher
Yeah.
fucking
Why am I forgetting it?
Mindhunter.
Mindhunter.
Mindhunter, not Manhunter.
I mean, they both
Mindhunter.
deal
What?
with investigating serial killers, so that's, typical.
Yes, fair. Um, but it was very theatrical, his performance. And Jonathan Groff, that's the same thing I said about Mindhunter, where it was just like theater acting but on a TV show or on screen. And there's, you can tell, I don't know if Ben Aldridge is a theater actor, it looks like he is. um it's just very kind of over the top. The delivery just feels unnatural at times. And I think that's maybe my biggest criticism is in his performance. I don't think he's bad or anything, and it doesn't ruin the movie. Like, I actually thought Jonathan Groff was quite good and Dave Bautista was quite good. Um, M. Night Shyamalan's cameo, hilarious in this movie.
Is it as good as it was
Abs-
in Old, though?
I think it's better, but like, I think you'll laugh quite hard when it happens. But yeah, like, a disturbing at times, like just intriguing throughout, like really kind of straightforward, simple M. Night Shyamalan movies. So I kind of appreciate that. Just take a step back and do something a little bit more simple, and I kind of vibed with it. So I think it's my favorite thing he's done in quite some time. Um, I gotta say, like, I know a lot of people like Split and The Visit. I was like, I liked The Visit, but it didn't like, I didn't. I liked it, but I think this is probably my favorite thing of his since Signs, man. So that's since 2002. So like, it reminded me of early Shyamalan, like where, um, it didn't have that kind of weird, should I laugh at this or should I enjoy or should I genuinely enjoy this kind of vibe to it, which I feel like everything after Signs with The Village, Lady in the Water, Happening, Airbender, After Earth,
Ooh.
Split, Glass, Old, like all of those movies, there are some good things in some of them, but like they have this off vibe to them, where this felt like, oh, okay, it's that kind of PG-13 to almost R-ish, disturbing, kind of a little bit more creative or simple M. Night. Like, yes, those movies relied on a twist with Sixth Sense and Signs and Unbreakable, but like, I don't know. It's like it brought me back to a simpler time of early M. Night, so I kind of vibed with it. So I liked
Well,
it
also,
quite a bit.
I think another thing as well that I kind of find interesting about this movie, you have two cinematographers, and one of them is Jaron Blaschke, who is Robert Eggers' usual cinematographer. He shot The Northman, The Lighthouse, and The
I like
Witch,
the look of it.
and then also like he cast Anya Taylor-Joy in Split and Glass. So I think he's weirdly like a Robert Eggers fan in a way.
I don't doubt it.
Um, but it is his career, I think, is kind of interesting, and it's always worth talking about. Where like The Visit was him at the bottom of kind of the barrel a little bit, where like he
He
kind of
like
went to,
self-funded it and stuff,
well,
right?
and in going to Blumhouse, right? And like
Yeah.
that was him kind of being like, okay, and also doing the found footage thing, right? Or like a version of the found footage thing with the kids, going to visit their grandparents for a little bit, and having kind of the screen life kind of quality as well, right? With Catherine Hahn being the mom who kind of comes in from time to time on video messages. And then from there, like Split was the film that kind of brought him back fully, right? Like in terms of financial success, not mixed critical. Like it's not a bad movie, but it's not a great film either. A lot of it is really on James McAvoy. But that movie, like you look at that film and it's kind of like, it's one location for the most part, and it's a group of people being terrorized by one person, or multiple people in the case, if you look at it with James McAvoy, and his disorder. So it's interesting that like that's kind of the film that he's been making for the last little bit, where his movies are more stripped down because he's also self-funding a lot of his stuff. So like Old is a single location movie. Glass for the most part is a single location film. He seems to kind of be interested in doing that now, or maybe there's a strategic kind of financial incentive to making something that is a little bit more self-contained overall. So I
Yeah.
find that kind of interesting as well. And yeah, he's just one of those guys where it's like, I don't know if it like my love of Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, or not Sixth Sense, Signs, it, because I like Sixth Sense, but I think Sixth Sense
I
is
know
one of
you,
those
yeah.
movies you go back that kind of there's more holes in it. But Signs and Unbreakable are so good and taps into his tone perfectly, that he has been able to coast on those movies for so long. And every time he presents a film, they're always they're good concepts. Like I think they are, all of them. Even The Happening is not a bad concept for a film. It's just ultimately the execution and also the hiring of the right people. Like hiring Mark Wahlberg to play a high school, science teacher was the worst thing
Yeah.
he could ever do. Um, but
I'm
again, like
all
I like
about off type because look at Dave Bautista playing a second grade teacher in this, or
But
what he
Dave
says is a
Bautista is
second.
a more subtle actor. You put
Yeah.
glasses on him and he becomes a very subtle guy, which I
Yeah.
like a lot. Tiny glasses and Dave Bautista are a winning combo. But there is it's just something really interesting about his, like, I like parts of Lady in the Water. I think like that movie doesn't work as a whole,
Same.
and it just came out the same year as Pan's Labyrinth, which is kind of, in terms of if you're
Oh yeah.
picking one kind of like, fantasy-esque story, that's the better movie. But there is always something about him where it's like, man, if he just kind of, finds the right person for the role, or if, like he's able to kind of tone down a little bit some of his stuff. I think maybe if he co-wrote some of his movies with someone else, or had a producer to kind of say, maybe you want to tone it down a little bit, because I feel like he does have free reign, and that's maybe
Yeah, I think
also,
we've said that for a long time. Is like I think he just letting someone do a first pass, but then pass it off to someone to do a rewrite or something, just to kind of hone it in a little bit. And
yeah.
like, um, I've said that for a while, that I think that's maybe what he could use, but now with him and it on Knock at the Cabin, there is three credited screenwriters with himself, Steve Desmond, and Michael Sherman. So maybe that is what happened here. Um, and I'm all for that. I just feel like, yeah, because if you look at Old, if you look at Glass, he's the sole credited screenwriter. Split, sole screenwriter. So it seems like with Knock at the Cabin, whether it was Universal, is it Universal who released it? Yeah,
Yeah.
Universal or someone that said like, hey, maybe just get someone to do a pass on this after your first draft, or a couple people, I think is maybe a good call, because I think it worked out here. It's just, back to the roots, kind of doing something simple, and not relying so heavily on a twist, even though it's still kind of there. Like, that is one of his trademarks. You still kind of have to have it, but yeah, I think if you haven't checked it out, it's worth seeing at least. I don't know if it's like a great movie, but I actually thought I had a good time with it. All right, Eric, anything else you want to talk about that you've watched while you were sick, or do you want to
Well, I
kind
mean,
of
I've
go
been
on
just
to?
watching stuff for work, which my reviews for
Yeah,
Marlowe and Sharper will be available on Rogers pretty soon. We have the review for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I also mentioned in that review that I rewatched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I gotta say that rewatch was just fantastic, and
yeah,
I'm so
I did that
excited
recently
for
too. Yeah,
Across the Spider-Verse. Like it's just
yeah,
like, and then I rewatched, or there were, yeah, because I hadn't seen the trailer for Across the Spider Verse since it initially came out, but then I rewatched it, and yeah, I am so excited for that movie. Maybe a little bit too much so because I don't want to get my hopes up. Just I don't know if that movie can follow in Into the Spider Verse's footsteps and pull off as good of a movie, but um, yeah,
if
that
we get
film
half
does.
a good movie, then I'm happy.
Yeah, it's just that, like, Into the Spider Verse does exactly what I want all comic book movies to do, which is maintain that artistic style. That because I think comic books, even though I haven't read a comic book really since I was a teenager, but comic books are always going to be better than the movie because they're so stylish, they're so inventive with what they're doing, and they don't necessarily focus on plot. It's more so the design of the image of the frame and kind of movie. I mean, there is story obviously, but it's not as plot focused. Where with films, I think the biggest problem with Marvel, DC, any comic book adaptation, it's always about moving the plot forward, or putting more plot into the film, not story. I mean, like getting from A to B to C and introducing characters and storylines and subplots that kind of feel like, okay, are we overdoing this? Are we setting too much up for something that should be, told within the framing of, one film? Or are we going to carry this on into sequels or within the rest of the world that we're creating? And Spider-Verse does that, and achieves the or earns the multiverse kind of narrative arcs that it spins, but at the same time it's always about the character first. And I feel like the character is so important to these stories that it always gets a back seat to, you know the writing, the plotting,
Yeah,
the constant, okay, well, we have to have, this character introduced and this origin story to explain how they became this character, and now we have to set up the villain of the piece and what they're all about, and then also we have to have what the villain is after, or what, is on the line. And it's never about, the people just living their lives and now having to live their life, changed in a way. And Spider-Verse gets that, and Spider-Verse takes the time to really focus on Miles Morales as a person. And I think also visually speaking, like, more animated comic book adaptations, I think, would suit Marvel or DC because the style is just so unique to the storytelling and experimental. And we have seen a little bit of that, post Spider-Verse, with even, the Mitchells versus the Machines, and Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. But it's kind of refreshing to see a comic book adaptation that starts in 2D getting a 3D but still animated adaptation. You can play with scale, you can play, like, just like the
yeah.
size of Miles versus the size of the Kingpin, like
Kingpin,
things like
yeah. Where
that
in live
is
action that
amazing.
wouldn't work,
No.
right? Or it would look goofy, or something like that. Like, I mean, look at even Modoc in Hitman. Like, it
Yeah.
just doesn't quite work when you translate it to live action, and you just have the freedom to kind of do some spectacular, pardon the pun, for Spider-Man, like things that you might not be able to do in live action, whether it's budget restrictions or just the way that it would look or anything like that. I agree with you. Everything from style to character to even the plot of the movie, like it's simple but creative, and it does focus on Miles, and it is an incredible fucking movie, and I just cannot wait for Across the Spider-Verse as well. I'm 1,000% with you, and even if it's a part one or part two, like I actually, they changed the titles and removed the part one and part two because it's Across and Through, right, or something like that. I forget what the or
Yeah.
Beyond. It's Across and Beyond the Spider-Verse. So
Or it's the
like,
seed bearer.
um,
I don't know.
what does Beyond the Spider-Verse even mean too, right? So like I really do think you're gonna get even more creative stuff with all the Spider-Men, with Tom Holland, with Tobey Maguire, with Andrew Garfield, with everyone who's ever played Spider-Man. And I think like that's just, that's the icing on the cake, because the cake is Miles's story, and I feel like they're still gonna do a great job with that. And um, you know, I know they're not directing, but you brought up Mitchell's versus Machines, and Phil Lord and Chris Miller, I think, are just such great producers of guiding people to very funny movies, very creative movies, very exciting movies or television shows, but that also have a ton of heart in them and have like a great, like even Jump Street has heart, and even like these really stupid kind of things that they do like have a heart to them and focus on character. So like, I even watched a trailer for Strays last night, which I didn't even know was a real thing. And I'm like, you know what? Phil Lord and Chris Miller are gonna put their names on this. I think it's them, right? Because they said that the producers of 21 Jump Street, but I'll have to figure that out. But maybe I'm completely wrong. But Strays, I'm like, all right, cool. Homeward Bound, but R-rated. Give me that.
Lost in
um,
San Francisco.
yeah, I'm excited for Spider-Verse. Um, Speaking of movies coming out this year, I say we now talk a little bit about, also because of 80 for Brady, the Super Bowl was this
Of
past
course.
Sunday, Eric.
It
So I
was?
think we should talk about some of the Super Bowl trailers that dropped this past weekend. We got a couple big ones, a couple smaller ones, and just scattered about some Super Bowl spots, uh, big game spots, whatever you want to call them. But um, we got a ton. So we got The Flash, we got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We got an incredible. Am I still here? It said I dropped out
Yeah.
for a second.
No, you're here.
Okay, cool. We'll trust it. We'll keep rolling. um, we got an amazing Super Mario Brothers plumbing commercial to promote the movie. And we got some other stuff as well. Where do you want to start? Should we
I,
start with?
the Flash, I think. I
Yeah,
think that's probably the
yeah.
biggest one of all the trailers and previews for the Super Bowl, and the one that there's a conversation there, obviously, with just
Yeah.
surrounding Ezra Miller, but also now with James Gunn and Peter Safran coming in and changing DC, and how much is going to change moving forward with this, because you have to think, with this trailer, the idea was this was going to set up Michael Keaton as kind of the Nick Fury within the DCEU. That seems to have changed, but at the same time, if the Flash movie is popular, and if the Flash movie is popular because of Michael Keaton's Batman, which it probably will be, because it's going to tap into a lot of people who grew up watching Michael Keaton as Batman, us included, but then also like the Supergirl character. You know, if those characters are popular and track well with audiences, do they bring them back into the DCEU, or change the plans further? Because I couldn't see a situation where, the movie comes out and it does financially well because of, say, the Keaton stuff or Supergirl, um and then James Gunn being like, No, we can't. No, this is it. It was just a one and done thing. Like, we're not going to have those two characters back ever again now. I've made my mind up. It would seem kind of weird to like throw away money for like
Yeah.
Michael Keaton to come back in another version. I mean, obviously they're doing another Batman movie in this new DCEU with him playing the father of Damian. But it would just be weird. I don't know. Like it would be kind of strange
I
if the Flash comes out and it's like
Yeah.
a huge hit, and
I think they have a ton of different options here. So, firstly, the trailer, I was pleasantly surprised by. Again, Ezra Miller things aside, he's done some really
they,
allegedly some sorry, they have done some allegedly very bad things. Thank you for that correction, Eric.
of course.
That you know it seems like they're getting help, that Warner Brothers is, trying to help Ezra Miller. They have gone to rehab, and they're continuing with this. I don't know whether they were so far in where they couldn't replace them, but that's a very complicated situation that I think should be talked about and should be part of the narrative of this movie, because I think that is very important. Um, I don't know how to tackle that other than that statement, because like I'm trying to just this movie's coming out. They are in the movie. Um, and it seems like they might move forward with them if the movie's successful and if they get the proper help that they need. Um, that being said, I thought the trailer was quite good, and surprisingly so. I don't know whether I should be totally surprised, because, like, the first It movie was, quite good. I think, sorry, the director's name I'm blanking on right now,
Andy
Eric.
Machete.
Andy Machete, thank you. I think Andy Machete did a great job with that first It movie. Second movie a little too bloated, but it is what it is. But
That's
going
the
through
the
this,
title. It is what it is.
yeah. I didn't even mean to do that. But I don't know, like watching this, I think the excitement of Keaton coming out, even with the corny line of, "Yeah, I'm Batman." I'm like, "Fuck
Who
yeah, you
cares?
are." I'm like, "Yeah, you are Batman." Like and the way that even Michael Keaton's Batman, like that action sequence, that brief, it just seemed like that epic scale you want from a superhero movie, that it just immediately, whether it's just the trailer editing or the music that they use or the shots they choose, like you can almost tell when a superhero movie feels like a big deal or important versus something that just feels like another superhero movie coming out. And the vibe I got from the Flash trailer was that it felt like this big epic crossover event movie, and I wasn't expecting that, because like Ezra Miller's Flash in the Snyderverse, they took this sort of Spider-Man route with him, made him more of a comedic character, quippy, the younger character of the group. And I was fine with it. Like I thought they were okay throughout the Snyderverse movies. Um, I but I never cared, and I don't really have ever been a Flash person. Like the Flash, I read Flashpoint, which is this is based off of loosely, but that was more of an event comic than a Flash comic in DC. But I never read this singular Flash comics or anything like that, so I don't know and because of the DCEU and the Snyderverse stuff, which you brought up, and James Gunn taking over, and these movies that are still part of the DCEU, I was just like, I don't know do we need this? And then I saw this trailer and I'm like, oh, okay. And we've talked about Flashpoint for a while of being the perfect point to kind of reset this universe. And I feel like James Gunn, the way he's talked about it, I think he had a similar reaction to many of us watching that trailer on Sunday, that went like, God damn, this looks shockingly fun or good even. Um and or at least I really want to see this movie now. And James Gunn's talked about in that initial thing that he's seen the movie and he really thinks it's excellent. And yes, part of you goes, well, he's the head of DC. He kind of needs to say that now. But then he didn't say that about Aquaman or Shazam too. He didn't say those movies are amazing. He said The Flash is amazing and it's one of the best superhero movies he's ever seen. He didn't say jack shit about Shazam or Aquaman, right? So like part of me goes, okay, he doesn't have to say that about every DC movie. And James Gunn being the smart guy that he is, and I think the trailer just with Kara, with Michael Keaton's Batman, with Ben Affleck's Batman, the hints at other things, like I just thought it was a really, really well put together trailer. So then my brain, to your initial question, Eric, starts turning and going, as a DC fan, this gets me excited again because yes, I didn't love the DCEU, but if they can somehow redeem that and go, okay, we didn't love it either. Let's figure out a way to kind of say goodbye and reset everything and set up the new James Gunn thing. And he's come in early enough. This movie's been kind of sitting and for a couple years now as kept getting delayed and delayed, and they did reshoots and things like that. So like I could see them adding a tag, whether they cast a new Batman or whether the rumor is true that they're going to use one of the former Batmen as the DCU Batman, as the father figure to Damian, whether it's Christian Bale
Chazelle,
or Michael
Damien Chazelle.
Keaton. Yeah. Yes. Michael Keaton, or, I don't think they'll continue with Affleck. That wouldn't make much sense. But if they convince Christian Bale to come back, or they go with Michael Keaton, maybe still moving forward, he'd be an older dad, I guess, to a Damien, but that's fine too. Um, I think that James Gunn is smart enough to use this movie, especially if it is good, as that reset point, which I think they were already intending on doing. So I think he'll just add in his own thing at the end, whether that's teasing the new Batman or actually showing the new Batman. Um, but the rest of it, I think he'll pick and choose, like you mentioned, of what he wants. Because like look at he's keeping Peacemaker. He's keeping the Peacemaker team, right? Like I think some of those members of the Suicide Squad he'll continue to use. So he is taking, like, we're getting a whole Amanda Waller series, right? Which is a
Which is
character being,
basically like season 2 of Peacemaker, right? Because he's taking the
yes,
characters from Peacemaker, but
yeah,
focusing it now. So that's kind of interesting in itself, right? Because the season of Peacemaker was a really satisfying show, and I think part of it was because it knew where the story began and where it ended, but also now knowing about the Waller series, it's like, okay, this is a way of making season 2 of Peacemaker, but making it about Waller, who was a part of Peacemaker. And also it gives someone like Viola Davis, who, is amazing in everything, kind of the spotlight. And maybe we'll see more layers to Amanda Waller, because we really haven't seen much of her character other than being kind of a very dominant force that's kind of been in the background for the most part. So that could be
absolutely.
interesting.
And to that point, that shows that James Gunn isn't afraid of using actors that were in the DCEU to continue in his version of the DC universe, right? So to me, I think that lets him pick and choose who he wants. Like this Flash movie, it might not give you all the answers, but the end of it is going to reset this universe. And the new universe that comes out of this Flash movie will be James Gunn's DCU moving forward. So like I think whether that's him continuing with Ezra Miller as the Flash, or Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, we know Ben Affleck's probably done after Aquaman. I know they reshot some of the Michael Keaton stuff in Aquaman with Ben Affleck. I was gonna say Ben Stiller. That would be
That would be good. Ben Stiller
um
is the new Batman.
yeah, Ben Affleck, that's the rumor there, is that, and maybe they won't go with the Keaton thing anymore, because it seems like they scrapped that Batman Beyond movie that they were thinking of doing with Keaton,
And Batgirl completely.
and Batgirl completely. So maybe that's not in the cards, which I'm sure, that's totally fine. They want to maybe go with a little bit of a younger Batman, or maybe they're going to go back to one of the other Batmen, and
But who else
which
would
it
it
would
be?
have to
Because
be. It would be
it
Bale, right? Like that's the only
yeah.
one that you it would could possibly be. And I don't know if you're going to convince him to come back without Nolan to do a movie with a father-son movie, unless you convince Nolan to come back, but that's not going to happen with the Warner Brothers stuff either. Like I don't um and I don't see that as part of this, right? Like, so I don't know, man. Like, it's the Flash movie. I think looks like a big event movie. Like you can see they're playing off the Spider-Man No Way Home stuff of bringing in the old actors and kind of the different versions of Batman and I like what they're doing with the Flash and seeing his younger self. And it seems like maybe the rumor that there's like an evil Barry Allen is one of the villains, like Zod, Michael Shannon coming back. Like I forgot if that was announced. Like I wasn't expecting that at all. So like it's so interesting, like the death of the Snyderverse, right? The death of Henry Cavill's Superman. In I mean, like not the storyline death of Superman, but I just mean like this version of the character. Um, it's so interesting having such a big event movie that's going to use such a huge character from the first Man of Steel movie, which is the beginning of the Snyderverse, coming back. And it's seemingly like from the trailer that there's no metahumans in the Burton verse. That's why
The
Batman
Burtverse.
yeah, that's why Batman is the only superhero because there's no metahumans in that world, right? That's
Well,
why
weren't they implying that Kara is in the Burton verse and that like
yes,
she's been like
yes.
trapped? I mean, this is only from what I'm thinking of
So
the
that's what I
trailer.
yes, so I think it's like Clark didn't come to Earth, Kara did in the Burton verse, but she's been held captive the whole time, whether it's by the US government or whoever it was there, or whatever government it was. And then that's why they need to get Kara because Zod invades Metropolis in the Burtonverse, but there is no Superman in that universe. There's only Batman, the Michael Keaton Batman. So and he can't fight Zod by himself, but then Barry goes to Batman to try to because he knows that okay, no metahumans, so Batman would maybe still exist because he's not superpowered. So that's intriguing to me. Like that's kind of cool. I like the look of Supergirl in this and like they already announced a Supergirl movie, right? So to your point,
The World
maybe
of
they
Tomorrow, I think it's called, right?
yeah, like I could see them using this version of Supergirl too, right? Like it I don't think all is lost in this movie where it just feels like it's okay, we just need to get this out there. This one feels like a hey, we're going to reset things. Maybe we'll take elements of this, but all of the DCEU stuff is still going to be technically quote unquote canon when they move forward, right? Because James Gunn's already talked about it being a multiverse and that they're going to use some of these actors, which we just talked about with Viola Davis and things like and John Cena and probably I wouldn't be surprised if Margot Robbie still continues in some way moving forward and stuff like that too. But um, it's messy but intriguing now after this trailer, if that makes sense. Like I'm more intrigued in the DCU than I ever have been after this trailer, and maybe that's because we're such Michael Keaton Batman guys, or just love that character and that version of the character as well. That like I don't know what I didn't get your total vibe of the trailer. What do you think of the movie itself?
I'm mixed on the trailer, Matt. I think the
Yeah,
biggest problem with the trailer, just in terms of why I'm not completely sold on it, is some of that Zack Snyder remnant still on the film, especially with the CGI and even
yeah,
the scene where we're introduced to Batman and we have kind of a version of Danny Elfman's score as he swoops down and takes out these villains. Like it feels a little bit jarring if you're going into the world of Tim Burton's Batman where there was no CGI at the time. There was
right. But
stop motion animation and things like that. I know it's been 30 years, but there is still something a little bit weird coming back to after Batman Returns and seeing this Batman digitally augmented for certain scenes, and that
to kick the
also,
shit out of people, yeah.
yeah, I don't mind that part. I don't mind him beating people up because I mean Michael Keaton's Batman's kind of mean. But the part where it's like, oh, like you're seeing a lot of the effects and style of this the Snyder DCEU on display, and even
Especially in the
just
way
with
Kara
Zod.
moves too.
Yes, yeah,
Zod
like
and
that
Kara,
that
yeah.
scene where it's like, where it's like, "What do we do, Batman?" It's like, "We don't die."
I
And,
love it,
like
dude. I loved it.
I
I
well, I
loved
love
it.
it because it's Michael Keaton, and I love, like, just seeing him in that trailer. I was weirdly emotionally moved by it because it was like, "Oh, it's like he's back. I haven't seen him for 30 years. And just like, there is something about like you grow up with certain actors and performances and characters, and I feel like they're, again, like a generation grew up watching, the VHS version of Batman, when it was released, and there's just something that's partly nostalgic but also partly like you have an emotional connection to, someone like Michael Keaton, who, was so iconic in that role, and even just him doing the smirk, like it all, like it just, it is the strongest aspect of the movie, and I think that's the most enticing aspect of the trailer, where it's like, I could care less about the Flash. Like, I don't care. I don't
Yeah.
care about Superman. I think the Aquaman movie's fun. I think the Wonder Woman movie is fun, but I don't think they're great. I think James Gunn's the Squad movie is probably the best of, the DCEU before, the change.
Which is why he's taken over. Yeah.
Exactly. But with this trailer, it's like I still don't care about the Flash whatsoever, but it's like I'm going to go and see this movie. I'm going to have an interest in it because of Batman, because of Michael Keaton. And like
Oh,
those are
absolutely. But
those are
I thought it
that's
was
the selling point.
I agree. If you take Michael Keaton's Batman out of this, am I as excited as I am? Probably not. But I just still thought it was a really well put together epic superhero trailer where even if you did take Michael Keaton's Batman out, just the way that it's cut, the bringing Zod back kind of thing, like I I was just more intrigued than I thought. Like, and even Nevis, my wife, she has, I don't even think she's seen any DC EU movie, was like, I kind of want to see that. And I was like, yeah, right. And I'm like, I don't know why I turned into Mark Wahlberg there, but like, I was just like, we were both surprised at how much we were like, that looks good and I want to see it. And maybe that's because my expectations were in the toilet, but like, it's just, I am, it's skyrocketed as one of my more anticipated superhero movies of the year. And I don't know what it's competing with exactly for the rest of the year. I'm blanking now. Like
Well,
I
there's
guess
there I mean,
Guardian we're
Shazam,
going to talk about. Yeah.
Aquaman,
Yeah. Um,
Guardians, the Marvels. I think that's
Yeah,
it for this.
Spider-Verse we
Yeah.
talked about. So yeah, like obviously Spider-Verse is number 1, but yeah, man. So I don't know. I'm the Michael Keaton stuff is obviously the most intriguing, and then how they're going to reset that universe, I think. Like Aquaman 2 and Shazam 2, I could not give a flying fuck about. Like I don't even
No.
want to see them.
But it
But
will be interesting
I
with Aquaman coming after the Flash and the reset having probably happened at this point, or not. I don't, like, that'll be interesting. I don't think I'm not interested in Aquaman 2 either, but um the continuity of that, because if Ben Affleck's Batman is in Aquaman the Lost Kingdom, I think it's called, um it'll be interesting to see, like, will that take place before the Flash reboot, or does
I
that take
assume
place
it
after the
will.
Flash reboot?
I think they'll do something to set it up that it's before both of those movies, I think.
Well, you
But
can
who
get
the hell
away with it
knows,
with
right?
Shazam because it's coming out before the Flash as well, right? Where like,
Right. Yeah.
and Shazam's also still, I mean, when I say still, it is only now going to be, it's pretty isolated from everything else, right? Like, Shazam never kind of was brought into the Justice League fold as of yet, so Shazam kind of feels like a one-off anyways, right? So,
Yeah.
with this, it's now a write-off. And like with the Black Adam stuff, and even just the DCEU in general, it is just kind of interesting thinking about like all this stuff that they had planned with Snyder moving forward, or just even what he had set up, is now just kind of finally being tossed aside. And it probably should have been, 4 movies ago. But it's amazing how long, something takes to be reset, or re kind of figured, when it's already partly made money, because even though a lot of these films have been critically panned, they've done well. they've made money. You know, Dawn
Oh
of
yeah,
Justice
totally.
and
Yeah.
you know,
The characters
the
are so
first Suicide
popular and
Squad
carry
made
it. Yeah.
a lot of money. So it's like that's
Yeah.
why they kept going with Snyder's vision for so long. It probably wasn't even necessarily a creative aspect. It was kind of just like, well, you know, Wonder Woman did really well, so we should probably keep this going because we and so that's why I'm thinking with the Flash. It's like if the Flash does really well and the response is so strong to Michael Keaton, it's like, what do you do then? Is it just still going to be a one off with him now, or are they going
Maybe
to
you
figure
continue with him in the Brave and the Bold, right? Like I'm
right?
not saying that Michael Keaton is too old to be Daddy Batman
I
and
mean, he's
Brave and the
almost
Bold.
70
Like
though, so
that's what I just Damien would probably have to be a little bit older than a teenager, but
yeah.
or Batman's getting his fuck on when he's 60 something. But like I don't know. But there's ways that you can go about it. I think people think the Christian Bale thing might happen, but I can't see it happening. I don't know.
I think they'll just go with a
I
new actor. I think like that's probably like if you truly want to start fresh, I think you need to start with a completely different actor. You know,
The Bale thing I guess makes sense because you've already introduced Talia and you could easily retcon some bullshit that, you know,
well, you
they
could say
got their
Selena and him had a kid, right? Because we're
you could, but
Dark.
Talia is like a big is Damien's mom, right? And I
But
feel
does
like
it have
that's
to be
kind
for the
of a
comic book movie though? Like that's the thing.
I don't know. I think it's an important part because the League of Assassins and how he was raised, and he's like, I guess you don't have to, but I don't know. We'll see. But the Flash movie, in my opinion, looked awesome, so I can't wait to see it. We'll see. Um, we'll go now to the sticking with James Gunn. We'll go to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. A weird time. Head of DC Films has to go promote a Marvel movie, the end of his trilogy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is our second trailer now. Um, Obviously, it seems like the film is going to focus a lot on Rocket, and it almost seems like Rocket might be the main character of the movie, even though it is very much an ensemble. But they're really hammering home the emotional one last ride, one last time together, all as a group kind of thing,
It's a
and
Fast and Furious
um,
movie.
kind of, and then we'll talk about that too in a second. But I really love the vibe of this trailer. It's something we talked about in our Ant-Man review as well, being like James Gunn has a really good handle on character, and why his Guardian movies work so well is, yes, they have fun, pulpy kind of plots that are, but like really it's focused on that group of characters and this them coming together and from these different spots and being all this kind of misfits and kind of things like that and they really focus on whether it's Peter or um Gamora and Drax. Like each character has a developed uh story and you connection to them, which I feel like when we talked about Ant-Man you don't get with anyone in that movie, right? So James Gunn does a really good job with these, of really giving a shit about a talking raccoon. We're all gonna cry in this movie about a talking raccoon and his backstory, or at least a lot of us are. But um you get Lila the otter again. She looks
It's a
like she
CGI
has a robot
raccoon.
arm.
Come on, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna cry. You're going to too.
No, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
gonna cry
I'll
when
make you.
Batman shows up on screen, but I'm
Yeah,
not gonna
that's
cry
true. I mean, that's fair.
when a raccoon shows up.
You will. I'm
No.
obviously very excited for Guardians.
Yeah, I am as well. It's interesting because like again, there's more of a fascination with James Gunn right now and where he is that I almost feel like that's distracting from the movie itself, but also looking at this movie, it does feel like there is a little bit more setup for future Marvel movies with someone like Adam Warlock, right? Like that character, you know, will probably play a pivotal role moving forward. And it's like how much of that character will be integrated into, this story that's the end of this version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's like, how much time are you going to spend with Adam Warlock and setting him up, even though you did get a little bit of that with the stinger for Guardians 2, which feels like an
An
era ago.
eternity ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's like you got to bring that character into the fold. You still have stuff with Gamora and Star Lord that kind of needs to be resolved. And then I think the one also interesting thing is that with that trailer and the new poster that came out, the there's been no announcement yet of who's voicing Lydia, the daughter, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. So I wonder if that's going to be like a last minute thing where it's like they'll announce it, like the month before the film comes out, or
Or you don't even know until it is in the
yeah,
movie. Maybe it's a big name person. I don't know. But I always said Lady Gaga, but with her being Harley Quinn now. But hey, James Gunn, DC, you never know.
yeah. I mean, with
Um,
Jared Leto being both Morbius and the Joker, anything is possible.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I there's not much to say. It's Guardians of the Galaxy and I'm excited for it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do agree with you. They have to balance like a lot of different things, but I think Gunn is so good at that, as we mentioned. Like, yeah, they're introducing, Adam Warlock, who especially in the comics is a huge part of the biggest aspects of the Marvel universe. So you know, I think they did a good job at introducing Cosmo in the holiday special. I think the Gamora stuff should be interesting on how they tackle that, because I know Gunn has always talked about how death should matter in comic book movies in the MCU. So it might not have even been his choice to kill off Gamora in the Avengers movies. So him dealing with that and the repercussions of that, I think, is interesting, and he'll always kind of have an interesting or good approach to that. This being this final movie with this group, I think, we talk about fatalism as well a lot, and it's something that I know that really bothers you, of like, you can end a story without having to kill off your characters.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm curious to see how they approach that here as well. Um, because it does look like, in moments, there's that one shot of Peter screaming, obviously, that we've seen in both trailers. So it's alluding to a huge loss in the movie. We had,
Sean
the
Gunn
original.
dying.
Yeah, it could be. um you That'd be funny. You have Groot dying in the first film, and oh my god, why am I blanking on what's his name, who dies in the second one? Why am I blanking on
Michael
this, Eric?
Rooker's Yondu.
Michael Rooker's Yondu. Thank you. I can't
Call
believe I
yourself a
fucking
Marvel
forgot
fan.
Yondu. I just went on the
Who's great?
Guardians
Who
ride
is
at
great in
fucking.
that movie
Oh
too?
yeah, and I'm sure he'll somehow pop up in this, like he did the holiday special or something.
Yeah.
But in whatever way. But I don't know who they kill off, if they kill off anyone, um,
I just
and
told
how you
you, Sean
disband
Gunn.
this team, right? Yeah. So
That is the
I'm
scene where I
excited
will
for one
cry.
last ride,
The character
and I'm
we've come to
also
love.
Sean Gunn. Can we even name his character's name?
Nope.
Um, Sean Gunn as Kraglin. Yeah, Kraglin. Thank you. It has been a while since I've watched the Guardians movies, and I remember loving them when they first came out, and then I watched them so much that I kind of
You kind of burn out
softened
on
on
them.
them. But I'm excited for this, man. It has been a while for a pure Guardians movie. We got the holiday special. I went on that Guardians ride at Disney World, which I'll talk about next week, but it was fucking incredible. It was awesome. So I can't wait to talk about that more too. But yeah, I'm obviously very pumped for this. Moving on to, let's talk about it. Vin Diesel was in Guardians 3, and it wasn't technically a Super Bowl trailer, but it came out the week of the Super Bowl. But we got the Fast X trailer. So it was while I was away, this dropped. The beginning of the end is here. The beginning of the end of the road, Eric, is here. And I think it's a good time to be, wrapping this up. But like, I'm still here for the ridiculousness, and I want to get your thoughts on the full trailer. Does it look like every other Fast and the Furious movie? Yes, it does. Is Jason Momoa kind of perfect for this franchise? Yes, he is. Do I love the ridiculous retconning of Fast 5 that he was there the
Yes.
entire time?
He was behind the
Absolutely,
safe.
yes. We just didn't see that. It's
That
so
is amazing.
stupid. It's so dumb. And that's what I love about this stupid franchise is like, oh yeah, retcon everything. Show me someone was just off screen that entire time. Show me Jason Momoa was there when Dom was fucking born. Like I just want all of that where give me every stupid retcon of that franchise and just add more dumb and ridiculous shit. So I'm all in. I think Momoa seems like a good adversary. I think he fits this franchise perfectly. Brie Larson, sure. Um, I realize she has her trademark like I did just like a little head tilt look, everyone. And I'm like, oh, that's a very Brie Larson thing that I'm just realizing that she must just do. Um, but I like Brie Larson, so that's fine. I forgot John Cena's coming back as well with his uncomfortable hair. Um, and um, and I just the movies are so dumb that I just the dumber the better. And I'm gonna throw it out there. I've seen people talk about it online, and I had the same thought. Are we in a face-off situation at the end there with Dom and Cypher? I think that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So, like, that makes me go, "Oh," and people have said this online too, of, "Is that the way you bring the Brian character back is that he face offs with someone and then he's in a
Oh
different
God.
body so the character can come back but anyways I'm just gonna throw that all
This is
out
getting
there.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I really just hope as well, like we get more Kurt Russell because I feel like they kind of left
yeah.
that storyline a little bit vague. Like, no one dies in the Fast and Furious movies. Let's
Oh,
be
we know
real.
Gal Gadot's coming back too, right?
Yeah,
But I think so.
yeah. I mean, the only person that really is truly gone is Scott Eastwood, which is a good thing. So, but
Has
yeah,
Kurt
I
Russell
do.
confirmed to come back in this one or
I
no?
don't know. I don't think so. I mean, like he wasn't confirmed really to be in the last one either, but he had the cameo, so
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised.
Oh,
More
we
Kurt
have Rita
Russell and
Moreno joining the franchise as
yeah,
well. Finally,
80 for
finally.
Brady and Fast 10 in 1 year. So is this basically like part one of two? Then is that kind of what they're
The
setting it up
rumor
as?
I would love this if this is the route that they go with the dumb titles. This one is going to be Fast X, and the next one is going to be Furious X. So, um,
Or
which I
or
love.
or the movie starts and it's like Dune, where it's Fast X Part One.
Part one. Yeah. Some people would just love if the next one's called FX2. So, um, I'm like, just the dumber the titles as well, the better as
I mean,
well.
that title's
So,
already taken though with Brian Dennehy and Brian Brown, FX and FX2. So don't want to confuse people
yeah.
there with that hit movie. Yeah, I mean, like it kind of looks the same, but I think the best part of that trailer is the retconning of Fast
Oh, yeah.
Five, where he is like literally standing where the safe has been pulled out.
Which
It's
he
just like,
clearly was not there.
yeah.
Like, uh,
I gotta go back and
the
watch Fast
best.
Five now and see if he like they'll re-release Fast Five and they'll do like a Star Wars thing where they
The
digitally
George
place
Lucas
him
thing.
in.
Yeah. Oh my god, it looks so dumb. I'm so excited. Yeah, and then what I alluded to at the end, you see Cypher and Letty um in the same room. And as Cypher gets up, she goes, "Oh, what the hell?" or something like that. And then like they start fighting, and then Cypher does that little fucking knee jump. You know what I'm talking about? She goes, "Ah," and like what Letty does in the last Fast movie where they're trying to find Han and they're fighting those guys in the stupidest way when they find Han that he had that flag in the window. So stupid. And then like when she's fighting, she uses that knee smash thing. So I'm like, did Letty and Cypher face off? Like, and then switch bodies, which I fucking hope.
I hope
Um,
it's more like
ha-
Dragon Ball Z though, with Captain Ginyu of the
yeah,
Ginyu Force, where
right.
like he switches between Goku and himself, and
Yes.
that's how it's done.
I think that's what it's going to be. Um, so I'm all for that. Just go as stupid as possible. Like, I just
Now it
want the
is
dumbest
science
plot
fiction at this
lines.
point.
If we weren't already there, of course we are. So, I love it. Fast X, Furious X, probably coming next year. Are they both Louis Leterrier? We'll find out. I think they are. Really, it's
Okay.
Vin Diesel directing them, right?
Yeah.
But
He is the true mastermind behind it all. But I don't think it's really the end though. Like I think like there'll be some
oh,
time off
the
between
next
cuz
generation, yeah.
yeah, cuz Vin Diesel, I mean like it was announced that he's going to do a fourth Riddick movie with David Toohey, but this is his bread and butter and I feel like there's nothing else really that he's been in that's his as a lead that has done well enough to continue on. Even with Riddick, like they're cult movies, but they're not popular in that kind of you know big box office kind of way. They do have an appeal, but yeah, I honestly think that it's not. I mean, it never is. There will be another spin-off like Hobbs and Shaw or something like that, or
Oh
they'll
no,
see
the
like what
Fast and
character
Furious
does
will
well.
continue for sure. Whether it's a time jump because they've already introduced uh little B, which he named his kid Brian after his best friend
Which
who's
doesn't make
still
any
alive.
sense.
Like it's like if I had a kid and named him Eric. No offense, Eric, but that would be a little
But if I
weird.
was dead
If
in
like
real life, but if I wasn't like
but if you
if we
weren't
made
dead
movie
in
versions,
but still, the thing is, in the movie, you're not dead, right? So
yeah,
why would I name my kid after you? You're the best, man, but I don't think I would name my
I
kid
wouldn't.
after you.
No, I wouldn't.
Like, so
You should have called him
it's
Paul. Like that would make more sense. But then also that'd be probably
it's
in poor taste.
weird. Yeah, it's weird. Anyways, just be as dumb as possible. There were a couple more spots quickly. Indiana Jones. Um, I've never been an Indiana Jones fan, so I'll kind of kick this over to you. Like, are you excited for this? Or are you kind of
No,
just like,
I'm kind of like
yeah,
I'm gonna watch it, but honestly, no excitement. And it's not even necessarily because of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It just kind of feels like those first three movies were so well done, and they were all directed by Spielberg, and even the fourth one, that it's just kind of like let's move on. You know that
yeah,
those movies, their time has come and gone, and just be happy with what you have. And I like James Mangold, but like James Mangold's a guy that's very hit or miss. For every Logan he makes, he also makes a very run of the mill studio movie that kind of feels lifeless, like Ford versus Ferrari. And I hate it when I see reviews that say this is like a movie they don't make anymore, and I'm just like, come on, really? Like that's we're calling a conventional run of the mill movie a great kind of they don't make them like this anymore film, and it's just like that kind of infuriates me, but that's besides the point. I just feel like, again, I'll watch it and maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. I mean, I like the cast. I like Mads Mikkelsen, villain, being a villain again. I don't know if he's
Phoebe
gotten
Waller
to that.
Bridge.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good people. Toby Jones, like there's a lot of good people in it, but
I like
yeah, I
Homeboy
just
that was in Logan as well.
yeah, I don't know why I'm forgetting
Uh,
his name, and I just had it on the tip of my
he's one
tongue
of those
because
vanilla guys, but one of the good ones, you
he's
know?
sort of the bland whites that works.
Yeah,
Um,
like I'm
uh,
forgetting everyone's names today
I
because my
am too.
brain
Well, I mean,
is
I'm still recovering from being sick, so I'm gonna blame
it
that.
starts with a B, doesn't it?
Yeah, because he's great. Boyd Holbrook, because he was great in
Boyd
Vengeance. Is
Holbrook, I got it.
Yeah, yeah, because he was great in Vengeance, and we talked about that movie last year. Um, yeah, he's pretty solid. I mean, he's not one of those guys that's like we need Boyd Holbrook for this movie, but when he
No,
shows up in a
but
film,
whenever
it's
he
like,
shows up, I'm like, yeah, okay,
yeah, yeah.
good for you, Boyd Holbrook. Um, yeah, for me, who's not an Indiana Jones fan, hasn't really done much to go, ooh, I really want to see this. Um, More CG heavy than maybe I would like,
Well, the
or it
de
seems
aging as
like.
well,
Like
right?
the de-aging I'm almost okay with. It's fine. I just I don't know. I'll definitely go see it. It's made me kind of want to rewatch the Indiana Jones movies because I've really done it only once, and that was about, I want to say, 5 to 8 years ago or something like that, in between that time frame. And like I know they're out on 4K now, and So I think leading into Dial of Destiny, I probably will do a rewatch. And I was one of those people with the hot take of like the first one, Raiders is the best one, but then my
Hmm.
second favorite was the alien one that everyone hates,
The Kingdom of
Crystal
the Crystal
Skull.
Skull by Dan Aykroyd.
And because I had no expectations for it or didn't care, there was no baggage, there was no anything. I just watched it and I go, you guys are all this movie's fine. I'm like, it's not that bad. I'm like, I don't, it's good, even. And so I never understood the hate for that movie because when I watched it, I was like, I don't know, I like this better than the second and third one. Um, and maybe that's just my more modern sensibilities and stuff like that when it comes to movies. I don't know,
Well,
but
no, I think it's
Raiders
also
is,
because you didn't have that attachment to those first three
yeah.
films as well, which isn't a bad thing. I think sometimes like fans can get so entitled and invested in something that if a movie does even something just a little bit different from the previous films, people can feel like, oh, well, that's not the way it's supposed to be, or how dare you do something with
I
my
agree. I
movie,
didn't love
you know?
Shia LaBeouf or anything like that, but I felt like there were elements like Kate Blanchett in that movie I kind of liked as she's the villain, right?
You
Or
didn't love Mutt,
um
Mutt
I didn't
Williams.
love Mutt, but and I think I hated the one a lot of people like with Sean Connery.
Oh, The Last
Um
Crusade. Yeah, I love that movie.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
And that was my least favorite one. I didn't like it. And like so that's kind of where I'm all over the place with the Indiana Jones franchise. Like I think Raiders is a classic. I've seen it in theaters even. I saw it. Not when it came out obviously, but on a
Yeah,
re-release. I
1981. You were
yeah.
around then.
I was still in my dad's never mind. And
In his dial of
yeah, his
destiny.
dial of destiny. Yeah. So yeah, I saw it on a re-release at AMC Whippy, and I was like, oh no, the first Raiders of the Lost Ark is a classic, but like I just don't care about Indiana Jones. So I don't know. This one dealing
What
with like
about
time
Dr.
travel,
Jones? Do
Mabel.
you care about Dr. Jones?
Um
The Aqua
the
song.
Aqua song is great. Yeah, it's fantastic. This one probably dealing with time travel, I kind of like. I mean, that's just me theorizing with Dial of Destiny and some of the de-aging and showing the de-aging of Mads Mikkelsen and Harrison Ford back in the 40s, right? With
Yeah.
the Nazis and stuff like that. So I think that could be cool. I love a time travel story. I'm a sucker for time travel movies and stuff like that. So if that's going to be kind of the sci-fi element of this movie, um, I am intrigued by that. So um, that is keeping me going. And I do like the cast and having Phoebe Waller-Bridge come in, and you have Antonio Banderas and you said Toby Jones, Boyd Holbrook, Mads Mikkelsen. So like the cast is quite good. And again, Mangold, because how much I loved Logan, I'll always give his stuff a shot. But yeah, I'm with you where if you go back to Walk the Line, 310 to
Ugh.
Yuma, Night and Day, like they're hit or
310's
miss,
good. I
right?
kind of
And
like 310 to
yeah, I
Yuma.
like 310. I like 310. I don't even mind Walk the Line. And Night and Day is just forgettable. But
Except for all those
I
passing out sequences that transition into the next scene.
no thank you. So I don't know. I don't know. It's just Indiana Jones doesn't do much for me. Um
It would be better if
anything
it took place in the late 90s and it was called the Dial Up of Destiny. And it's just basically Indiana Jones frustrated with his internet.
Well, didn't people say like this movie technically should be taking place in the 80s, right? But then I think
Yeah,
they're
or late
setting it in the
70s.
60s,
Yeah.
but like they're setting it in the late 60s. So he's playing a couple decades younger than he should already, and then he's going to be
Yeah.
DH for the other sequences. Um,
But if it's
because they
time
said if you
travel as well, I mean, who cares?
no, none of it really matters.
No.
Um, And then, okay, anything else? We got a Creed 3 trailer, a 65 trailer. We can kind of just do a roundup of stuff. What other big game spots did we get? We got a
Oh, Super
Scream.
Mario Brothers,
Yeah, I
because you
wanted to
wanted
get
to
to
mention
that.
that.
Screevy got another teaser that's coming out soon. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Um, we got what else did we get? Transformers Rise of the Beast did a like a Porsche collab to reveal
Let him
Pete
come.
to let Pete Davidson come into the Transformers franchise.
Wasn't he in that
So we got
trailer as
Pete.
well with Brie Larson and John Hamm about like making a sandwich? I think that was
Sure.
also a
Um, that was
Super
a
Bowl
Super Bowl
trailer.
commercial, yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyways, there was all those, and like most of them are just for movies we've already seen trailers for. They're just slightly different. Like I've kind of avoided Scream stuff now because we're getting close to it. Dungeons and Dragons looks worse the more that I see it. Um, and Creed, I've kind of stopped watching stuff because we're pretty close to that as well. So, and then if you wanted to mention anything on those, Eric, or can we?
Oh, I was just gonna say I also stopped listening to Creed music because I just want to make sure that I get the full experience of watching Creed 3.
God
So
damn
you know.
it. And then finally, just it wasn't technically like a Super Bowl trailer or anything, but the Super Mario Brothers movie dropped a Super Mario Brothers plumbing commercial to promote the Super Mario Brothers movie, and it's using the theme song from the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. And I just want to give a shout out to that because it's absolutely perfect. And as a kid who used to wake up at 5 in the morning to sneak downstairs to watch Ren and Stimpy and the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. One of them I had to sneak and watch because my parents told me I couldn't watch it, which is Ren and Stimpy. The other was just because the only time they would air the Super Mario Brothers Super Show in the 90s was at 5 a.m. So I got up to watch that before school, and hearing that song again brings me to like the Lego movie or some of the kind of more meta humor from poking fun at yourself, but then also utilizing that nostalgia and the history and the deep cuts and things like that for people who really love the characters to kind of make fun of it or have fun with it. So hearing that song from that show in a faux TV ad for the Super Mario Brothers in the movie, and just even the woman reading off being like uh the corny line of her saving money
They'll drain
from
everything,
them, yeah,
but
thing
not my
except my
bank
bank
account.
account. It's so good as she like looks over then gives them like a weird look. Like I just think it's perfect, and the logo being the original, like one of the original Super Mario Brothers title treatments. Like everything they're doing for this movie so far has been spot on. And I just hope that they can pull it off. And I'm starting to see it come together in my head of like how the movie's going to play out, of like Mario and Luigi kind of down on their outs, like as these kind of struggling plumbers in the Bronx, and like Mario being kind of a, probably someone who's never accomplished anything, and Mario and Luigi haven't, or something like that. So that's why he gets brought into the Mushroom Kingdom and has to help save the Mushroom Kingdom and stuff like that. Like it's like a perfect in my head right now how you would adapt such the simple thing of Mario, a plumber, such a stupid concept, having to save a princess in a fake world, and how you're going to incorporate that in a grounded way but still a fantastical way of them being like actual plumbers in New York, but then using the history of Super Mario, and the deep cuts and the music has just all been perfect so far. So I don't want to get my expectations too high, but everything I see from this, Eric, I'm like I'm more and more in. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the best case scenario is that just looking for something that's fun, and
yeah.
like again, like there's not a lot of plot or story when it comes to the Super Mario Brothers or just Mario in general. I mean, like there's just it's just basically Mario saves a damsel in distress, and
Yep.
goes through various levels to do so. So how do
And it's
you
always a
extend?
giant Koopa.
Yeah, it's always Dennis Hopper. So how do you know make that a narrative that's not too convoluted or overly wrought, but also kind of pay tribute to the images and the references from the game, but make it work, because obviously they didn't know what they were doing with um the live action version, even though when I was listening to the show that I keep talking about, uh, uh greatest movies never made, the first draft of that live action adaptation was apparently like perfect. And what happened was, when you get rewrites and notes and things like that, it will change to the point where it's never going to be what it started out as, and even if it retains some of it, it's just going to get more complicated, or it's going to go through a series of filters, whether it be um you know screenings for the, what do they call those screenings, like the marketing screenings for people that like do like the surveys and things like that, where it's like
Test screenings, yeah.
test screenings and stuff like that. And so that's what happened to that Super Mario Brothers film. And also the people that were making it didn't care. So, like they had free reign. So it'll be very interesting to see how this movie plays out when it comes to, making kind of a hero's journey story that makes sense for this world, but then also feels like a Mario Brothers video game as well. So I think this is the best way to go doing an animated film. So I think it's gonna do well. I think it's gonna make a lot of money. I think people might be surprised with how much money it makes, depending on how successful it is. But if it's anything like Minions in terms of getting families into the theaters, it's I think it's going to be one of those surprise movies of 2023 that maybe a lot of people right now aren't thinking is going to make over $200 million or something like that, but it ends up doing that kind of business.
Yeah, I agree, man. I can't wait. The more I see from it, the more I'm like, I fucking can't wait for this movie, and I hope it's just like you said, fun or entertaining. Anything else you wanted to chat about before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll just quickly mention that I listened to the Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania press conference, which was moderated by Randall Park. It was a fairly standard conference overall. Like a lot of the questions were, basically where the characters are now, and Randall Park, who was a very charming guy, kind of was keeping it pretty much in kind of a spoiler free zone. And you could even tell
Yeah,
that some of the actors, just by listening to the audio file, were always referencing or referring to Kevin Feige and saying like, oh, can I talk about this, or can I mention this? And part of it, I think, was more interesting listening to that conversation, because the film that they were talking about sounded more interesting overall than the movie that was made. Like, you had Peyton Reed talking about like spending 3.5 years developing the landscape for the quantum realm and what they were putting into it and the influences, both scientifically and cinematically. It's like, oh, that sounds all really fascinating. And Michael Douglas kind of being like, I'm in a lot of R-rated movies, and I wanted to make something that was more for kids. And so him doing this kind of makes him more relevant, but also finding more insight into the world of Ant-Man and Marvel. Doing this press conference was kind of charming and funny. And then they bring up the idea of speaking of family with the Fast movies, that this movie, the themes are about family and vulnerability, and sort of having this blended family come together. And again, like, a lot of what they were talking about was interesting. And even Jonathan Majors, who was talking about the idea of how Kang is the version of Kang that you see in this movie is supposed to be a reflection of the hero he's up against. So this
yeah,
Kang is supposed to kind of be perfectly suited for Scott Lang, and how Jonathan Majors would kind of be studying and watching Paul Rudd, and kind of taking in certain mannerisms and things, and using that maybe to his advantage in his performance. But it's also strange him saying that, because the version of this Kang feels more theatrical, and would be probably better suited to go up against Tom Hiddleston's Loki, where the version of Kang in Loki kind of felt more down to earth, weirdly, and kind of over his reign of terror, and would probably have been better suited up against Scott Lang in this movie. So kind of it's such a weird kind of jarring juxtaposition of considering those two versions kind of suiting each other, because the whole idea of what Kevin Feige was talking about in the conference is that the reason why they brought Kang into the Ant-Man world first, or the Ant-Man trilogy, was they wanted to pit Kang against somebody that was, an everyman, somebody that maybe you wouldn't necessarily think would have a chance against, someone that threatening, you know, this early on into Kang's, origin story. And that again sounds interesting, but at the same time you're watching it and you're thinking to yourself, why is it Ant-Man? Like it would be better suited for, like, it would almost weirdly be better suited for like the Guardians to have some sort of connection, in the same way that Thanos was kind of, on the periphery in the first Guardians movie. So again, I don't think this conference really did all that much to kind of add a greater appreciation for the film, but in terms of them talking about the creative side of making the movie, you do appreciate that, there was an idea there, and there was some inspiration and influences that, even though it didn't really translate onto, the final product, there was something where it was not like, oh, let's just like make this movie, and make some money and call it a day. Like, there was some thought going into it. It's just a shame that the thought that, was developed over, 3.5 years to 4 years, really didn't translate into that film. And it's just like, yeah, it's like all the things that they were talking about, it's like, I'd love to see that in this movie. And it's not there.
That's always what's so interesting, right? With especially with these press conferences, I also love hearing about like the kind of behind the scenes or the motivations or how the cast worked together, or some funny thing about, one of the cast members quipping about the movie that they're in, like you said about Michael Douglas or something like that. Or it's always interesting when the movie is intended a certain way and everyone's intentions are good, or they and thought out of what they wanted to kind of portray, but then it doesn't, not for some people, obviously it worked. The reviews are pretty mixed right now, but I was mixed negative and you were just also mixed negative, but a little bit more negative. But um, it is always interesting to sit down and hear people talk about even a movie that it didn't quite work for you, but you get a little bit more out of hearing them go, okay, well, this is what I was trying to do. And in that moment, they're still saying this is what I was doing. But in your head, you go, oh, that I see where you were coming from, but that didn't quite work. So I feel like it's when you get something a little bit out of these press conferences. But I appreciate you going and doing that while I was away on vacation. So, um, yeah, I think you always get a nugget out of those things, even for a movie that didn't quite work. And I might go back and listen to the transcript that came through because I was just way too busy on vacation. But appreciate you checking that out, Eric. All right, everyone. I think that's going to wrap the show. I mean, speaking of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, you can go check out that review Eric and I did, spoiler free, at this very moment over on Untitled Movie Reviews and on YouTube. Eric and I went for an hour talking about what worked, what didn't work about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So please go check out that. We would really appreciate it. Go check out our newest episode of The Cast of Us. Episodes 5 and 6 will be up this week. Episode 5 is a bit late because of I was on vacation and Eric was dealing with some sickness stuff, so like we weren't able to record that one on time, but we will do a full recap and breakdown of episode 5 that will be up very, very soon. So keep look for that on The Cast of Us. And then on episode 6, which is Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, you guys will get another new episode of The Cast of Us. So 2
Entitled
in the
Kin.
span of a couple days. Oh, Kin.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
So I'm excited for that. 10 p.m. Eastern, Sunday nights, new episodes. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming moving forward. And then we have all of our Sundance reviews, lots of other stuff coming out on Untitled Movie Reviews. So make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube, drop us those thumbs up. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on podcast services. We appreciate it. The one-stop shop to find everything, just head over to Letterboxd, which is Untitled_cast. And you'll find everything over there. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at untitledmoviepodcast.com. And you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
I'm Eric Marchin. You can find more of my video reviews and interviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene. I have an interview with Variety's Senior Awards editor, Clayton Davis, which was very nice of him to spend some time talking about this year's Oscar nominations. And it's always good to kind of learn from somebody who's really on the inside and knows what they're talking about. So if you want to know more about the Oscars this year and some of those nominations, definitely check that out. And you can find more of me on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Dial.
Dial who?
It's your dad's dial.
God damn. That was the worst knock joke I've ever heard in my life. Dial of Destiny coming to theaters in 2023.
Your dad's dial of destiny.
God damn it. Bye, everyone. That was horrible.